Hello, hello. My name is Malika Dupree Walker, and I am a proud intern of the Gender and Sexuality Equity Center, also known as a GSEC. But we're not a gang whatsoever. We're not a gang. Actually, the mission of the GSEC is to be inclusive, to promote safe space, and to give way for feminist thought, and also for all issues, all loves and interests within the LGBTQ community. I myself am a part of the LGBTQ program, and I am coming to you today to do a PSA, public service announcement. I'm more so thinking of it as an expose on one of my favorite cultures within the LGBTQ community, or perhaps outside of the LGBTQ community, because I don't want to be limiting or silencing to the experience of anyone, ever. That's what the GSEC taught me. Moving on, I'm going to be presenting an expose on drag culture. So come in, we're going to dive. Firstly, I should start off with a loose definition of what drag culture is. So, okay, let's do it. I'm a little sick, but I'm not going to let that deter me because I'm jazzed up about drag culture. And I can speak, I promise you. Drag refers to dressing in the clothes and adopting the persona of a person of the opposite gender. People usually dress in drag when they are performing or entertaining. It is common to use a stage name or impersonate celebrities. Drag is different than cross-dressing or living as a transvestite, which is usually more closely related to someone's core gender identity. So I wanted to definitely make sure that I got that end in there because, like I said before, I don't want to silence any people that are within the culture just because they may not be what is the majority of representation. But at the same time, there's an open door for drag for anyone. Come whoever you are, all sizes, all shapes, all sexual orientations. We'll love you as long as you work. Okay. So I also wanted to give a little bit of history about the drag kings and queens within history, and they also had a very big role in the Stonewall riots of 1969, and ultimately were an impetus to starting the birth of the gay rights movement. So, if anything, they deserve kudos and a really big huzzah just for being integral and being out in a way that was gender bending, which was very just divisive at the time. You could be locked up for dressing in drag, but these people are still comfortable enough within their skin, comfortable enough within their craft, that they still went and did it and forged a way for people like us to be here today and be able to present ourselves in whatever way we so like. And that is amazing. Moving on. I definitely wanted to highlight drag kings within this presentation because I feel like drag queens, especially in mainstream media, with my favorites like RuPaul's Drag Race and different areas on TV, they're a lot more visible than drag kings if you aren't doing the work of really educating yourself and watching documentaries and finding that information. You may not. So I wanted to give a definition also of drag kings and then give a little bit of history that was behind that. So, the definition of drag kings are mostly female performance artists who dress in masculine drag and personify male gender stereotypes as part of their routine. Drag kings are often performed as exaggerated macho male characteristics. So, in the same way that drag queens exaggerate femininity, drag kings exaggerate this whole macho persona, but not always. They often like to portray marginalized masculinities, whether that be construction workers, rappers, and there's also the ever budding and growing popular movement called fag drag. Now you're saying, did she really just say that? But in the sense of this arena, it's more so of a reclaiming of that word, because so much so within the drag king culture specifically, that representation, like I told you, is to personify a very exaggerated masculine persona. But a lot of women said that doing drag as a woman who is trying to personify a man doesn't necessarily mean that she has to feed into this stereotypical, ideal of what a man is, and making that very masculine and macho and all these other words. So there are women who portray men and are drag kings that work within this fag drag subtype who have worked to reclaim the word so that it can more so represent effeminate men as well. And that is that subgroup within drag kings who have just, I feel like, a prevalent and impactful place within the drag king community because they are showing that range, which is very important so that all people, like I said, and I'm going to reiterate throughout this PSA, are comfortable expressing themselves exactly as they are. And that is noteworthy. So, also, drag kings were first cited in print in 1972, and there's a long history of female performers dressing in male attire. In theater and opera, there was a tradition of breeches roles or ancien vesti, which comes from Latin, which basically just means this whole gender bending phenomenon in which you do gender performance of someone who is outside of your own biological sex or gender presentation, which you make in the world on the everyday basis. Some of the, I guess, pioneers within this movement was the actress and playwright Susanna Saint-Livre, and I know I'm saying that right because it's French, and I took French for 7 years, and I should know. But she appeared in breeches roles around 1700 and gained like a lot of acclaim. But here in the USA or United States, our first popular drag king or popular male impersonator in the US was Annie Hindle, and she performed all throughout New York City, on Broadway, and 1867 and beyond, and she was one of the first most popular American drag kings. So as opposed to me thinking that this was kind of more so of a new endeavor, I've learned and debunked my own, I guess, false thinking, and that drag kings and queens have been around for quite some time. So you think you're doing it new, honey, but believe me, there are women before you that were working. Okay, so since I've just said one of my favorite words, hunty, which is honey, just with more emphasis, because when you do anything within drag, you have to give a little bit more drama. You have to make it a little bit more bigger. You have to exaggerate it so that it's larger than life. And that is what it's all about. So, since I do love RuPaul's Drag Race, which is seen on Logo on Monday nights at 9 p.m., was that a shout out? I don't even know where that came from. I just love it that much. But anyway, there's a lot of terminology thrown around, and before, I knew too much about drag culture, I was like, what does that mean? So I had to do a lot of urban dictionary finding and stuff of that nature. But now RuPaul has made it very easy for us, and there's a whole drag terminology list on our website online, and I personally just love going through these and seeing how I can incorporate more stuff into my everyday life. So, from one drag to another, you might incorporate number one, which is an acronym, BGB, which basically means when you are through with somebody and they are throwing you shade and they are giving you some nonsense that you are not trying to be hearing about, all you gotta hit them with is a BGB and walk away, which means bye, girl, bye. And in this sense, when you're personifying a woman, I know some people do not like the word girl for grown women or just adults in general, but since there's always a playfulness, and I feel like within this community there's a certain amount of respect that's already given, this may not be as offensive for drag queens, but BGB is definitely one that gets tossed around a lot, and it basically just means I'm not here for that and I'm removing myself from the situation. So hence the double bye and girl boo. Boo. I'm not here for that. Number two is chicken cutlets. And this speaks to kind of the transformation that happens when drag queens get into costume or make this transformation. So chicken cutlet, it's not the edible form. It's basically those inserts that you can put into your bra to give the appearance of breasts and feel more feminine in your gender performance at the time. And I've also seen a really cool kind where I wouldn't call this a cutlet, however, but it's almost like a layover that you're able to put over a chest. My chest is already flat, so maybe I could use this as well. Just kidding. But it's basically like a flat prosthetic that you can put on, and it's already raised with the appearance of cleavage. So then you secure that into whatever you're wearing, whatever your garment may be if you're a drag queen. And then you apply makeup over it and blend it so that it looks just like your natural chest. chest. And that's the way that you can get like more of that fleshy cleavage that people so want to personify. And then there is Fishy, which is basically a drag queen who is doing a very good job of passing. And that means that you maybe cannot tell whether or not she is in drag or whether or not she just looks like a woman. I know that one of my favorites from RuPaul's Drag Race does a very good job of this. Her name is Ivy Winters, and Ivy Winters does a great job of this, and when I first saw her in drag, was not sure if she was anything besides a woman. So when you hear Fishy, that's like almost an ultimate compliment, because that means that you are gender performing or displaying your gender performance to a T and have done so well in your transformation that I wonder, I have no clue whether or not this is your real gender or not your real gender, or whether or not this is a gender performance, or if this is something that you do every day. So I thought that was interesting because I didn't know what fishy meant until actually researching for this PSA. I heard it a lot, but I didn't know. Now we're going to get into some of my favorites. And these words, to a degree, can be derogatory, but I more like to think of them as just being very blunt. Sometimes, depending on what else you back them with, it can get a little crass. But one thing that I do like about the drag community is that they keep it real. They give you the truth. It's raw. And sometimes feelings can be involved. But at the same time, I feel like some of the best ways to like snap somebody out of a behavior that you don't like or let somebody really know what you mean is to just be straight up honest. And that's what I do respect about drag culture. So there are plenty of words that go around this like way of thinking of just being sometimes brutally honest, but in a lot of ways those can shake people out of their shells enough for you sometimes to address them in a very real and influential way, I guess I would say. So the first one I have for you is read. And read basically is like a burn. It's the art of insulting, and it was popularized by the 1990 documentary Paris is Burning, which is also like a documentary on drag culture. But reading is basically telling somebody about themselves in a very blunt way. So if you're to read somebody, it could just be, you know, you're a real, live, mean person. You are touched with a singe of the devil on any so day of a week, and I don't appreciate it. I'm not here for that. That's a read. Perfect read. I tried not to use any curse words because it's not always necessary, but basically just being really frank with somebody and telling them possibly the negative parts of their presentation or their actions or their behavior that you don't like. And it might be the simplest way to let that be in the open and let that person know that, whoa, I really present myself in this way. Maybe I should check myself. It's a way to check somebody. A burn is very similar, and it's just telling somebody the same thing. That one's usually maybe a little bit more catty if you're going to use a burn because it's supposed to sting the heart. It's wording is for a reason. But also, when in the right connotation, can be used to an okay degree if it's really what you want to convey. So, shade is another one that we hear a lot. Throwing shade is actually attached to it a lot as well. It's kind of like acting shady, but it's basically in its noun form addressing an illegitimate behavior. And then in verb, it's typically, like I said, you put throw or throwing before it. So it could sound like they went to the club and they didn't even invite us. Shade, like rude, like how dare you? You know what I'm saying? So shade, and then it also relates very much to tea, but they can also be used separately. Tea is basically like, what is the news? Give me the gossip, like what just went down. So let's say you've been away on vacation for 2 weeks, you hear all this little stuff in the air, but you don't know really what went down with Kaya and Chris, but you just want to know what's going on. So you will walk up to your best friend who was there and say, spill the tea, as in like spill the beans, like give it to me. So when put together, as I was saying, it reads something like, no tea, no shade. And that can just be like, no disrespect, no offense, like no harm done. But again, I'm going to tell you about yourself. So it could be anything from, I love you, Lady Boo, but no tea, no shade. I can see your hair extensions. We're going to need to do better than that. It wasn't meant to be necessarily mean or malicious, but at the same time, I got to give you the real. And if you're walking out and your hair is not how I know that you wanted your hair to look, I'm going to let you know. No tea, no shade. So I love them. I use these all the time. And then there's just all the ones that personally make me feel like empowered and good about myself. So we use, and these I feel like have done a really good job of crossing over into like mainstream vocabulary because I hear them among friends. My mom will throw out a fierce every so now and then. And they're not really that concentrated that much within drag culture anymore. But it's a good way in which we are able to adopt certain attributes from drag culture. And I think that's awesome. So one of those is sickening. When you originally hear sickening for the first time, you think that it's almost a burn or somebody is throwing shade, as I talked about earlier. But actually, sickening has the exact opposite ideal or objective in mind. When you say somebody is sickening, it's like they literally made you sick. Like you might faint. Like you are just sickening. And when I hear it, I feel like a tinge of like jealousy, but you're still good. Not jealousy, but like, well, damn, you are looking good. You are looking sickening. Do you know what I mean? So I like that one. But like I said, it doesn't mean like actually nauseous whatsoever. It's definitely a compliment. And another one that goes along with that is fierce. And I love that one because when I hear fierce, it just makes me feel of like someone stepping into their power and owning it, like being ferocious, being powerful, like being able to say, this is me, I am owning it. No matter what my presentation is, and therefore, I am fierce, okay? And also along with that is work. You better work. I was going to say, girl, you better work. But you know what? It can be used for anybody. Lady, you need to work. Look at this woman work. Like, it's so powerful. It can be used really well. And there's all type of like derogative ways that are very like aggressive and hurt, like, I don't know, promote violent kind of vocab that's like, oh, I raped this test. We don't want to use that. Like, language is very powerful and you don't understand, you don't know what kind of connotations or trauma that can bring up for somebody. And it's just all around disrespectful to try to like, I don't know, highlight an achievement in a way that like has really like taken away from the power in a lot of situations. Or even like the word scrape. I used to use a lot too because like I'm from the Bay and that's a word that we use, but I had to realize like that's also violent language. And I can't kid myself into thinking that where I come from, scrape means being jumped. So why do I want to say that to like, I don't know, make some type of connection with success? It's not nice. And I much rather would adopt work like I have from the drag community. So when I finish a test and I know I've done super well, I can put work on the bottom because I knew I stepped into me. I did the best that I could in that situation. I drowned out all haters, all of my negative self-talk, everything in the universe that may have been working against me. And I said, you know what? I'm owning this. Work. Love it. So that's all basically I have as far as drag terminology goes, but they are just larger than life, as I said earlier, and they make you feel empowered to a certain degree if that's so something that you're looking for. And I just feel like they're very bold. I very much love it. And it's all about being yourself, being honest, being able to show up as your true self every day and have lingo that also conforms to that. So, I feel like moving on, I feel like it's now time to get into, there are various art forms that have come out of drag culture, but one of my favorites is voguing. Voguing was originally popularized with the 1990 Madonna song Vogue, where she's super glamorous and she has a lot of dancers in her background voguing. Now, voguing originally started within the LGBTQ community, but definitely made its debut into drag, where I feel like it was mainly popularized because it is very sensual. It uses like a lot of flexible ranging. It's all about kind of like, in a sense, dance modeling, where you're dancing but you're still working your angles. You pause long enough for people to see you. You really like step into that like, look at me, but like in a good way, like acknowledge me. This is my performance in this so time when it comes to possibly drag, and this is how I want you to see you. Like, I'm here, I'm queer, I'm gay, I'm straight, I'm whatever, but you know what? I'm beautiful, and watch me work. So one of my favorite Vogue stars of all time, his name is Benny Ninja, and he's actually very popular. He's appeared even on America's Next Top Model. He like hosted for the models and had them doing all this type of stuff to help them with posing, because like I said, posing is very much integrated into voguing. But it's just all type of like very nice dances. Like, I'll just do a little bit of the front. So if I have Vogue, I could like hit him with some like, this is giving face right here. So I can give a little face. I could box my face in. I could angle one of my like shoulders out, angle it back, hit him with a hunch, you know what I mean? And do all types of stuff. And then the arms are really fun too. There's all type of isolations that people do that go like this and here, 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 here. Fast, get it. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Work. Fierce. Do you see how it all comes together? And it's fun. That was actually one of my, probably my second display of voguing. And I'm not going to lie, since I think I did a pretty good job. Yay for me! So if you want a little bit more on voguing, I don't have a YouTube video attached, but I would definitely look more into Benny Ninja. Believe me, his name will pop up and he is sure to amaze you. Just letting you know. So the most important part of this section, or this PSA, I saved for last. And I was fortunate enough to do some interviews with a drag queen and king. The first one is Minnie Murda. We talked about basically how he, as a gay man, got into drag, and then what were his incentives and how it makes him feel. And for me, a lot of it was not like new news, but the way in which he expressed it, like the pleasure in which I could see that it derived for him in this presentation, was really like heart touching. And in any way, if people can feel more comfortable in themselves and just then living their lives in the everyday, I say amen. And can I get an amen? It's just a beautiful thing. So his experience was definitely impactful for me. And also I got to talk to Mr. Ivan Thrust. Now, Ivan Thrust is a drag king. So when outside of performances, this person is or identifies as a female or a woman, I should say. Female is not always the word to use. Yes, it can sound academic. Yes, it's like a biological terming in which we use, but really, let's speak to the true essence of people and say woman. So that's me checking myself, and that's something that we do here at the GSEC quite often. And I want you to be aware, you're never going to get it right all the time, 100%. But if you can check yourself and say, hey, that's language that I don't necessarily agree with, how about I use something that more so speaks to the whole experience of someone and who they are? Because we've all heard female been referred to as derogatory stuff, and usually it's female dog, and we're not even going to get into that word. So, cut it. So, when interviewing Ivan Thrust, it's really funny because even when I talk to, when I'm not talking to Ivan, Ivan is still referred to like in the third person, as if like it's someone outside of their self. And it really is, when they step into that character, they give themselves full permission to be somebody else. So more so as I always kind of correlate it to like an extension of self, which I definitely feel like it is for people. For a lot of people, they love personifying that person, and they they talk about them as if somebody else, because when they're in character, and that's where they have free reign over all of those actions. So when I was talking to Ivan Thrust, he was saying that he feels 100% male when he's performing, and that he also feels like he personifies his drag as a king, with this hyper kind of macho, masculine kind of attitude, and he takes the liberty to, smack a butt, be forward, be a lot more assertive and aggressive than he may so be in his everyday life when he is performing the gender performance as a woman. But it was really interesting to me, because also talking to Ivan Thrust, but outside, like when we were talking just woman to woman, she was saying that